Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. I'm very excited today to be joined by the wonderful Tressa. So some of you may already know Tressa because she is one of the jewelers who featured on the latest season of the Jewelers Retreat, which was aired just before Christmas. And I wanted to invite Tressa on because I realized that even though we've done the retreat and everything, we've never heard her full story. And actually, she's got a really interesting story and something that might be quite relatable to some of you guys. Particularly, Tressa is incredible in that she is a surgeon and she loves that job and she still wants to do that job. But she also loves jewelry making and has her own jewelry business, which she is building and growing. And I think there's, a growing sort of, I wouldn't say trend, but growing body of people who actually really enjoy the work that they're already doing in a different field and also really love jewelry making and want to build a business there. So we all know people who've hated their jobs and want to leave it to make jewelry, and there's lots of those. But I also think it's quite interesting to explore, well, what if we enjoy something we're doing, but we don't want to miss out on having a jewelry business because it's really in our heart and it's a passion. So I think Tressa's going to be a really interesting example of that. So welcome, Tressa. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hey, Jess.
Yes, so maybe we can just start a little bit about your story. I think some people may have heard, but some people may have never heard before. So, how did you get started with jewelry making? So, you've obviously been a surgeon for a while, I'm assuming. And where did the jewelry making kind of come in?
So it was back in 2018. My younger stepson, he was 13 back then, and he was going through a phase of really into knives, and he wanted to learn to make knives, and he wanted to build a forge in the garden and things like that. So we took
Sounds
him
very
on.
cool.
Very cool, bit dangerous, but he did get it in the end. But we took him on a one-day blacksmithing course, and and my other half and I went with him, and it was just watching how metal moves and you can manipulate it. It was the fact it's kind of half solid, half liquid, the way it behaves I just loved it. But I'm not really a standing outside in the cold, or getting covered in coal kind of person. So I was like, well, what can I do? And I've always loved jewelry making. So I started looking at jewelry courses. Well, I initially looked at silversmithing, then looked at jewelry making. And there's a jewelry school really close to where I live and work in St Albans. So went on a make a ring in a day workshop, and I was just hooked. From a lump of kind of slightly manky looking metal to a really shiny silver ring was just brilliant.
Yeah, they're dangerous, those workshops. Those
Yeah.
make a silver ring in a day. It's like you're hooked for life. I know those ones. Amazing. So yeah, so that's kind of how you were introduced to it. And did you know straight away that this was something you wanted to turn into a business one day, or was it more like a hobby to begin with for you?
No, it was definitely a hobby to begin with, but it just became a more and more consuming hobby. So I went from that course to doing lots of lots more courses and reading lots of books, and then even traveling around the country and out of the country to go on courses. And I was learning more and more skills and you making more and more pieces. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with all these pieces? And then I found the Jewelers Academy and found that the actual business side is really fun and interesting and very different from what I do in my day-to-day job as well. And so that became part of the passion as well. Choosing your branding, your packaging, how are you going to market, designing a collection. So yeah, that's how it.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you worry about, I guess, time? And I'm interested in like your time management and how you fit it all in. But I guess if you already have a job that's full time, and we can talk a bit about your hours because it's not the usual 9 to 5, is it? But it's a lot of hours. And yeah, how did you kind of grapple with that when you realized I do want to make something of this in the jewelry business? How did you kind of think about that?
So when I was training as a surgeon, in addition to all of your working hours, you have to do loads of other things. You have to write academic papers, do audits, and there's all these things you have to constantly do for your CV from the moment you get home and on your days off. And then when you become a consultant, you can kind of pick and choose what bits you want to do. So I do quite a lot of teaching, but I don't do that much research and that side of things anymore. So I realized I still had all of this kind of momentum and energy to keep doing things and learning things and producing things. but it didn't have a direction anymore. So that kind of coincided with me discovering jewelry making. So it kind of fitted into that slot. And in terms of my hours, I work 60 hours a week, but I do them in quite, so I'll do one day that I start at 7:30 in the morning and finish at 9 o'clock at night. And
A
then
long day.
long day. But then, for example, today, I'm working, well, I'm at home all day, and then I've just got a small evening clinic. So I can compartmentalize. And so I found I can get about 2 days a week where I can just make jewelry during the day or evening.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And when you found us, you have done some of our diploma courses. So the advanced diploma and the fine. Did you do the fine?
I didn't do the fine, but what I
Joined us
did
for the advanced.
was
Oh, awesome.
because I couldn't decide whether to do the fine or the advanced, I did all the projects that I didn't know how to do in the fine. So
So you
I
kind of did the fine.
did it myself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because you've done lots of training before, I think you've done lots of short courses. We don't let many people join just for the advanced. So you are the elite few, Tressa.
And Kath. Yeah.
And Kath, yes, Kath as well. She's also the elite few. Oh, brilliant. So I guess that was, in terms of how you worked with your time on that, the couple of days that you have, was it pretty much, taking up all your time?
I, I think it's either because I'm a very slow jeweler or because I'm a little bit OCD, but it did take me a full 2 days every week. But I also, luckily in the NHS, you do get a fair bit of annual leave. So what I would do is make sure that I booked a week of annual leave for the workshop week so that I could then catch up properly. And so that's what kept it going. It just all went slightly to pot after the retreat because we'd kind of postponed those last few projects and then we'd kind of got out of a routine. So that was a bit of a mad rush in November and December, but it all worked out in the end.
You got them all in the end. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what's it been like being on the advanced diploma? You've completed it now, but who was your mentors and what projects did you enjoy? Maybe you can tell us a bit about your experience there.
I absolutely loved it. So my technical mentor was Hayley, and her feedback was just so useful because she's got such a high standard and was really good at nitpicking the bits that I also wanted to improve on, but was also really supportive and reassuring and made me, I think I mentioned it to you on the retreat. It's the first time that I felt like a real jeweler when she said to me, "Oh yes, you could work as a bench jeweler with this quality of work." I was like, wow, to hear that amazing. Um, my business mentor was Karen, and I'm very fortunate that now that I'm doing the business
Oh, the Jewelry Business
jewelry
Academy.
business,
Yes, yes,
exactly.
yeah.
Karen's my mentor again, so that's been really nice to just continue with her. And she's very pragmatic, having worked in the banking industry before. She's very much like, you don't have as much time as someone who's doing this full time. Be kinder to yourself, and you will get that. And she's absolutely right. Yes, I'm building a business, but I'm doing it at a much, much slower pace than most people would do. And to not stress about it because I physically don't have as much time. But
Mm.
equally, I don't have the financial pressure to pay the bills with the jewelry business, and that's quite a nice luxury in itself.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's being really patient with yourself, isn't it? That, it's going to happen on its own time frame because there are, yeah, 2 days a week instead of maybe five that if somebody's been able to leave their job or, made redundant or whatever. And but I reckon you get a lot done in those 2 days. You're a very productive woman. So I reckon, but it always takes time anyway, even if you're working full time, it takes years to really build a successful jewelry business. So, yeah, it's been wonderful to kind of see the start of that journey. And tell us a bit about your business, what it's called, and what it looks like at the moment for you. How, if you get customers, how do you attract them? What's your sort of business overview, I
So
suppose.
it's called Russian Blue Jewellery, and the reason I chose that was partly because I didn't want to use my own name in case when patients Googled me, they got confused about what it is that I did. And so I just wanted to keep it as a slightly separate entity. And at the moment, most of my customers come from word of mouth, so friends of friends, and doing some commissions and some one of a kind work. But after the diploma, I've now got a capsule collection together, and so I'm planning to launch that later this year. I've got the website up. I just need to take the photographs and upload things now, and that's based around very loosely around the shoulder blade. So with the diploma, we did a lot of work in terms of signature style, and that I found that really useful because my background is so scientific. I thought I couldn't design because I can't draw. And going through the exercises and realizing there's other ways to design. So we did a lot of modeling, and I found that using polymer clay and just molding things in my hands was really helpful. And looking at your core values. And so for me, things like strength and resilience were really important. And what I found was with the shoulder, so I'm a shoulder surgeon. The shoulder blade provides the strength for the whole of the upper arm. So
Mm.
if you have weak muscles around your shoulder blade, you can't use your arm very well at all. And so I then use the shoulder blade as my kind of base model to create my collection. And so yeah, and I'm really, and I was able to add some stone setting and some pave and bits and bobs. So that's where that all came from. But the diploma really helped with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really nice to see your style kind of evolve throughout the program and your final pieces at the end and what you made in the retreat, which was that kind of shoulder bladey vibe with the beautiful pave setting, which you casually put in there, but it's actually really difficult to do. And you did quite a lot. And yeah, it was gorgeous. And anyone listening who hasn't seen the retreat, please do have a watch. It's a really great thing to spend some time on. And yeah, just for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's a little bit like the Great British Bake Off, but with jewelry. And Tressa and two other wonderful graduates from the advanced diploma came to the studio that's in my house where I live, and we spent a few days and they made projects based on design briefs with a specific amount of time. And it was really nice to kind of see their journey and what they're able to get done and in such a short space of time, really, and the process of behind some of the making. But Tressa, for there was a signature style day in the retreat, and for your signature style day, you did that kind of shoulder blade pendant with these pave settings. So it was really beautiful. Yeah. And what would you say? You've obviously achieved a lot already in your jewelry career. What would you say is your biggest achievement, or what feels the biggest? Because sometimes there are big things that happen, but actually, it can sometimes be small things that really make us feel like, when you said Haley said that to you about being a bench jeweler, or, you can pick one or a couple of real kind of highlights. It's always interesting to hear them.
I mean, being asked to be on the retreat was a huge highlight because, again, it's that whole imposter syndrome about I'm not a real jeweler, especially because it's not my full-time job. And then being asked to go there with two full-time jewelers was amazing. And then having tutors like Haley and Scott McIntyre telling me, yes, you are a professional jeweler. Because people would ask me, I remember being up at Vanilla Ink and someone said, oh, so, are you a full-time jeweler? And I was like, and then he was, no, no, she's a professional jeweler. And having someone say that
Mm.
isn't you, it's, yeah, those are
Yeah.
the biggest highlights. And then now finally having a core collection that does represent me has been huge.
Absolutely. And I think that thing of it representing you, like you said, is so important, isn't it? Because we can all make a collection and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Usually our first collections are just kind of things that we liked and put together. But when you've done some of the inner work to think, well, yeah, what are my values? What do I care about? What do I want to put love and attention and time and money into? And you've been able to link it to things that are really important to you. And it probably feels a lot more, I don't know, it kind of comes from you more
Yeah.
than necessarily like the training pieces that we make. So it's lovely. I always love seeing people's personal style evolve, and yours makes a lot of sense with the kind of work that you do. And what do you have colleagues, and do they know that you make jewelry? Do they have thoughts, or yeah, I'm interested in how the two work alongside each other, I suppose.
Yeah. So for a long time, I wondered about keeping the two things separate. But I've got this one colleague who he's really into lathe work. He makes a lot of pens, and so we operate on the same day. So we almost have a multidisciplinary team meeting is something that you normally have in medicine to make decisions about complex patients, but we have like an MDT about design. So he'll come to me with this pen going, I'm thinking of putting this resin with this brass inlay. What do you think? And I'll come and go, oh, and I've got this pendant. I'm thinking of doing that with it. So my colleagues have been brilliant and really supportive, and quite a few of them have asked me to make work for their other halves and things like that. So yeah, no, they've been great.
Oh, amazing. It's nice when your two worlds kind of come together in a nice way. And like and you're probably not the only one who wants a creative outlet and to different extents, of course, but it's nice to have other people who share similar goals, I suppose, around what you're doing. Yeah. Awesome. And so what's next for you? You've completed the diploma, you've done the retreat, you started your jewelry business, you're, doing your commissions. Yeah, what's the next chapter?
So I've just become a gold member at the Goldsmith Centre. So that's quite exciting. It means I can kind of go in and use their hot desking space and become part of that community a bit more. So I'm going to start using that a bit more. And the big thing is launching the collection. So I've got a few more pieces to make for it, and then getting it out there, and then starting to work on building on that collection going forwards.
Amazing. Yes. Well, we'll all be waiting with bated breath to see it, of course. No pressure. But it's something amazing about launching a collection, I think, and especially when you've worked on it so deeply and for such a long time and you're ready to kind of, build the customer base and put yourself out there in that way. That sounds really cool. And what advice would you give to anyone who's, I guess in a similar position as you, that they have a job that they enjoy and don't necessarily want to leave, but they also love jewelry making and they'd really like to pursue it. What advice could you pass on?
I think go for it, but be kind on yourself. Don't set your expectations the same as someone who may have different drive, different timescales. It doesn't matter how long you take to get to each stage, you will get there, and to just not worry about that side of things.
Mm, love
Just enjoy
that.
the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Few more questions. Nearly questioned you out. So on the Jewelers Retreat, you were crowned a little bit the tool queen. Because you had all these awesome tools, which we love. And, everyone makes with different things. And I think, like you said, in your position, income is not so much of an issue, but time is. And tools are one of the things that, if you are in that position, can sometimes help. You can do something sometimes a little bit quicker if you invest in your tools. So what would you say are some of your favorite tools at the moment?
Still my green lion saw, but
The trusty green lion, yes. So for anyone listening on the podcast who doesn't know what this is, it's like a fancy saw. It's really nicely designed. It's really beautiful to work with. It's totally not something that you need. That you can work with a standard jeweler's saw, but I'm the same. Always use the green lion. Love it. What do you love about it?
So this is it was made for me by the chap that runs Green Lion, and it's got a Paduke handle, which is the same with as the frets hammers, because I like things that match. So I asked him just on the off chance if he would make one with a Paduke handle. He hadn't made one with Paduke before. He said it was a bit of a pain to work with as a wood, but and yeah, and it's just lovely to hold, and yeah, so I think it's because it's personal, that it means so much to me. So yes, that's probably my number one favorite tool. Other ones, as I think I mentioned on the retreat, the pulse graver, totally not an essential tool at all.
Mm.
But going back to what you were saying about time, to learn to hand push to do things like pave setting takes years and years and years. Whereas if you use power, you can get that down to months. Still with work, I'm not there yet. I'm a lot better than I was, but I've still got a long way to go. But it just gives you that edge in terms of timing. And because of my studio being in the spare room at home, I don't have space for a big air compressor, and so that's why I use a pulse graver, because it's electric. It doesn't need a big air compressor to work.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Always good to hear what people's favorite tools are, I think. Yeah. And if people are listening and they'd like to find out more about you, where is the best place online for them to go?
Instagram at Russian Blue Jewellery, or Facebook again at Russian Blue Jewellery, or the website, which is also www.russianbluejewellery.com. And I'm always happy to chat if anyone wants to drop me a message.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Well, Tressa, thank you so much for taking some time out to come and have a chat. And anyone listening, definitely go and give Tressa a follow and say hello. Let her know that you listen to the podcast. She is a lovely person, a lovely jeweler, a lovely surgeon. And it's always nice to kind of build the community and support each other. So I'll also make sure we put the link to all of those in the show notes, and I'll put the link to the Jewelers Retreat as well for anyone who either hasn't seen or would just like to have a look again. So thanks again, Tressa, and thanks everyone for listening. I'll see you guys on another episode soon.